A Mother's War, How One Woman Defeated Wealth and Power with Pure Love. The Custody Battle, A Mother's Fight for Love. The mahogany doors of courtroom 7B stood like sentinels of judgment, their polished surface reflecting the anxious face of Elena Morrison as she clutched her daughter Sophia closer to her chest. The little girl, barely 3 years old, wore a crimson dress that seemed too bright for such a somber occasion, her blonde curls bouncing softly as she buried her face in her mother's shoulder, sensing the tension that hung thick in the air. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she smoothed down her black dress, the fabric suddenly feeling too tight, too formal, too much like a costume for a role she never wanted to play. Behind her, she could feel the weight of judgmental stares from her soon-to-be ex-husband's family, the prestigious Harrington clan, with their old money, influential connections, and army of high-priced attorneys who had already painted her as an unfit mother in court documents that cut deeper than any physical wound. "Mrs. Morrison, are you ready?" Her lawyer, James Chen, placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. His expression was professional but kind, though she could see the concern in his eyes. They both knew this wouldn't be easy. The Harringtons had launched a full-scale assault on her character, digging up every mistake, every moment of vulnerability, twisting her struggle with postpartum depression into evidence of instability. Elena nodded, unable to trust her voice. She thought back to the day she'd met Marcus Harrington at a charity gala 5 years ago. He had seemed different from his family, warmer, more genuine. But marriage had revealed the truth. The moment Sophia was born, the mask had slipped. Marcus wanted a perfect family to display at social functions, not the messy reality of midnight feedings and a wife struggling with her mental health. When Elena had finally found the courage to ask for a divorce 6 months ago, Marcus's response had been swift and cruel. "You'll never take my daughter from me," he had said, his voice cold as ice. "The family has resources you can't even imagine. We'll destroy you in court." And they had tried. Oh, how they had tried. As they entered the courtroom, Elena's eyes immediately found Marcus sitting with his legal team, 3 attorneys in impeccable suits, leather briefcases open, prepared for battle. His mother, Victoria Harrington, sat in the front row behind him, her pearl necklace and tailored red suit screaming old money and influence. The entire Harrington family had turned out in force, a show of power designed to intimidate. On Elena's side sat only James and her best friend Rachel, who had taken time off from her nursing job to be there. The imbalance was stark, visible, intentional. Judge Patricia Anderson entered, and everyone stood. She was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. Elena had heard she was fair but strict, with little patience for games. That gave Elena hope, not much, but enough to keep breathing. "Please be seated," Judge Anderson said, her voice commanding immediate silence. "We're here today for the custody hearing regarding Sophia Marie Morrison Harrington. Mr. Peterson, you may present your opening statement." Marcus's lead attorney, a shark in a $1,000 suit named Robert Peterson, stood with practiced confidence. "Your Honor, my clients are here today because they're deeply concerned about the welfare of young Sophia. The evidence will show that Ms. Morrison has a documented history of mental health issues, has struggled to maintain stable employment, and lacks the resources to provide Sophia with the quality of life she deserves. Mr. Harrington, on the other hand, can offer stability, educational opportunities, and a loving extended family support system." Each word felt like a dagger to Elena's heart. Mental health issues, as if seeking help for postpartum depression made her a bad mother. Unstable employment, because she'd chosen to stay home with Sophia rather than return to her marketing career. Lack of resources, because she hadn't been born into wealth like the Harringtons. James Chen rose when his turn came, his voice steady and clear. "Your Honor, this case isn't about money or social status. It's about what's best for Sophia. The evidence will show that Elena Morrison is a devoted, loving mother who has been Sophia's primary caregiver since birth. She has addressed her mental health challenges responsibly, with therapy and medical support. She has created a stable, nurturing environment for her daughter. The Harringtons' attempt to use her vulnerability against her is nothing more than a smear campaign designed to punish Ms. Morrison for leaving an unhappy marriage. Over the next 3 days, Elena endured the ordeal of having her life dissected in public. Marcus's attorneys called witnesses, his mother, who testified that Elena had seemed distant and overwhelmed During family gatherings, a former colleague who said Elena had left work abruptly when Sophia was sick, suggesting unreliability. Even their former nanny, who had been generously compensated by the Harringtons for her testimony. The hardest moment came when Marcus took the stand. He spoke eloquently about his love for Sophia, his vision for her future, his family's legacy. He painted himself as the devoted father whose wife had pushed him away, who had tried to help her through her difficulties but had been rejected. His performance was masterful, just enough emotion to seem genuine, just enough restraint to appear reasonable. "I just want what's best for my daughter," he said, looking directly at the judge. "I can give her opportunities, education, stability. I love her more than anything in this world." Elena's nails dug into her palms. She knew the truth. She had seen him spend exactly 45 minutes with Sophia on his daddy day per week, most of it on his phone handling business calls. She had watched him hand their crying daughter back to her without ever learning how to soothe her nightmares. His love was theoretical, performed for audiences, not lived in the daily trenches of parenthood. When it was Elena's turn to testify, she walked to the stand on legs that threatened to give out. Sophia was with Rachel in the hallway, spared from witnessing her parents' battle. Elena placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat down, facing the courtroom full of people ready to judge her. James guided her through her testimony gently. She spoke about Sophia's birth, the overwhelming love that had flooded through her even as exhaustion and hormonal changes triggered depression. She talked about seeking help, about the therapy sessions and support groups that had saved her. She described their daily routines, reading before bed, making pancakes on Sunday mornings, the songs they sang together in the car. "Tell us about your relationship with Sophia," James prompted. Elena's voice cracked with emotion. "She's everything to me. I know every face she makes, what each cry means. I know she's afraid of the vacuum cleaner but loves the sound of rain. I know she needs her stuffed elephant to sleep in that she says, bup, instead of, cup. I've been there for every moment, every fever, every milestone, every scraped knee. I'm not perfect. I've had hard days, dark days even. But I've never stopped fighting to be the mother she deserves. She's not a trophy or a status symbol. She's my daughter, and I love her more than my own life." Tears streamed down her face as she spoke, but she didn't wipe them away. This was raw, real, the truth of a mother's love that couldn't be manufactured or performed. Robert Peterson's cross-examination was brutal. He questioned her judgment, her finances, her mental state. But Elena held firm, answering each question honestly, refusing to be shamed for being human, for struggling, for asking for help when she needed it. The turning point came when James called Drive. Sarah Williams, Elena's therapist, as a witness. Dr. Williams spoke about postpartum depression, explaining it to the courtroom in clinical terms that stripped away the stigma. Postpartum depression affects 1 in 7 women, Drive. Williams testified. The fact that Ms. Morrison recognized her symptoms and sought treatment immediately demonstrates remarkable strength and responsibility. She has been an exemplary patient, dedicated to her recovery and to being the best mother possible. There is absolutely no evidence that her mental health has ever put Sophia at risk. In fact, by modeling healthy coping mechanisms and self-care, she's teaching her daughter valuable life lessons. Then James made his boldest move. He called Sophia's pediatrician, Drive. Michael Torres, who had been treating her since birth. Dr. Torres, in your professional opinion, how would you characterize Sophia's overall health and well-being? Sophia is a thriving, happy child, Drive. Torres said firmly. She meets all her developmental milestones. She's clearly attached to both parents, but her primary attachment is to her mother. In all my interactions with the family, I've observed Ms. Morrison to be attentive, knowledgeable about Sophia's needs, and proactive about her health care. I've never had any concerns about her parenting. The courtroom was silent. Even the Harringtons seemed to realize their case was weakening. On the final day, both sides presented their closing arguments. Robert Peterson made his case for the Harringtons, resources and stability. James Chen spoke about love, presence, and the irreplaceable bond between mother and child. Judge Anderson called for a brief recess before her decision. Elena sat in the hallway, holding Sophia, who had finally been allowed to return. The little girl played with her mother's hair, oblivious to the fact that her entire future was being decided behind those mahogany doors. "Mama," Sophia said, her voice small and sweet. "Home now." Elena's heart shattered and mended in the same moment. "Soon, baby, soon." When they were called back in, Elena's entire body was shaking. Marcus looked confident, his family smiling behind him. They expected to win. They always won. Judge Anderson adjusted her glasses and looked out at the courtroom. "I've reviewed all the evidence presented in this case, and I've listened carefully to the testimony. This court's only concern is the welfare of the child. While Mr. Harrington can certainly provide financial resources and opportunities, this court finds that Sophia's best interests are served by remaining in the primary custody of her mother." Elena gasped, her hands flying to her mouth as tears of relief poured down her face. Judge Anderson continued, "Ms. Morrison has demonstrated herself to be a capable, loving parent who has been Sophia's primary caregiver. Her struggle with postpartum depression, far from being a mark against her, shows her strength in seeking help and her commitment to being healthy for her daughter. Mr. Harrington will have regular visitation rights, but primary physical custody is awarded to Ms. Morrison. This court will not punish a mother for being human, for struggling, or for having less money than her ex-husband's family." The gavel came down, and Elena collapsed into sobs, clutching Sophia to her chest. James squeezed her shoulder, his own eyes wet. Rachel ran forward, embracing them both. Across the courtroom, the Harringtons sat in stunned silence. Marcus's face had gone white. Victoria stood abruptly and left, her heels clicking angrily on the marble floor. As Elena walked out of the courthouse with Sophia in her arms, the afternoon sun felt warm on her face. She had won. Not because she had money or power or connections, but because she had love, real, messy, imperfect, unconditional love. "Mama," Sophia said, pointing at a bird flying overhead. "Birdie." "Yes, baby," Elena whispered, kissing her daughter's forehead. "Birdie is flying free. Just like us." 3 months later, Elena stood in the small apartment she'd rented with her settlement money. It wasn't grand or luxurious. The walls needed painting, and the kitchen was tiny. But it was theirs. She had returned to work part-time, with flexible hours that allowed her to be there for Sophia. Her daughter was thriving, happy, surrounded by love rather than marble columns and cold perfection. Marcus saw Sophia every other weekend. Slowly, without his family's interference, he was learning to actually be a father rather than perform the role. It would never be perfect, but it was better. Elena had learned that fighting for love sometimes means standing in a courtroom and refusing to be ashamed of being human. It means telling the truth even when it's painful. It means trusting that a child knows love when she feels it, and that no amount of money can replace a mother's presence. As she tucked Sophia into bed that night, singing the lullaby her own mother had sung to her, Elena felt something she hadn't felt in years: peace. She had fought the battle, weathered the storm, and emerged on the other side with the only thing that truly mattered, her daughter's love and the chance to be her mother. "Love you, Mama," Sophia mumbled sleepily, clutching her elephant. "Love you more, my darling girl," Elena whispered. "Always and forever."